All right, guys. I'm getting ready for church, and I thought I would share share the what I'm going to talk about today to go over it for myself and be prepared. Also, to for people who can't make the dig deep. So let's take a look real quick. So day two is about strategy, and you can see that here. I don't know. Should I zoom in? Can I zoom in? I think I can. Yeah, there we go. All right, cool. A little pixelated, but okay. So the first question with strategy is, how do I know, like, let's say you're doing a blog post or let's say you're doing a big campaign. How do I know what to write so I stay on target, right? The message target. And how do I know how to make the right people see it? And so there's a couple of things here. So how do I know what to write so I stay on target? Why do we want to stay on target? Why can't we just make a general claim to everybody? And I think that's probably something I should talk about. Why can't I just make a super general claim and expect everyone to understand it? I'm going to turn off this so I can just talk for a little bit and not get distracted by what else is on the screen. Um, so, uh, why does it matter that I stay on target from a messaging standpoint? Well, think about this. If someone writes a letter directly to you, are you more likely to be engaged and understand it? And um, as opposed to if someone writes a letter to everyone and it has to be really formal and technical, when you got a form letter from, I don't know, your HOA or apartment or I don't know, something like that, or from the IRS or something like that, it has to be really formal, really clear, um, and really simple, right? And there's no personality, there's no joking. But as you get closer to, like a lot of times good brands, they know who they're talking to and they know who they are. And so they can talk more informally and it's a lot more fun to read their stuff. If someone you know and care about is sending you an email, you're reading it like it's from them and it feels way more personal and it's way more engaging because it's for you and it's about you. So that's the reason I want to write in a way, I want to send a message that feels like it's for them. And if they feel like it's for them, then they're more likely to read it, way more likely to read it than if it feels like it's just, like think about, have you ever looked up an article and you saw, oh, this looks like Chat GPT. I'm not going to read it. So, um, and then there are some times where you just wanted the basic technical knowledge, and you're like, well, I guess I'll read it if it's Chat GPT, maybe, because I just need something super basic, right? And so a lot of this is based on where you're, who your customer you're talking to, if it's a business, or even like, let's say you're talking to Jehovah's Witnesses. There's going to be a different message, right, to them that's going to resonate with them. Let's say you're talking to, men who served in combat arms in the military, right? There's some kind of like combat, trained, is going to be a different message probably because it's a different culture that you're talking to. Same thing with law enforcement or things like that. And so there's just a different message. So, how do we know what to write so we stay on target? That's a key question. The other question is, what do we need to make so the right people will see it? And those are related. And it's basically who is the audience, right? And what's your message? And so, how do we go about this? So let's switch back over to the recording or to the image here. Okay, so I say we start by writing the blog. So now you may think like, no, that's not the right place to start. We got to start with, thinking everything through and we have to start with research and all this stuff. And you're kind of right. But there's a reason I want to start with a blog because for a lot of us, we're like, why can't we just write the blog? Especially younger people. I don't need to do all this research. I can just write a blog, right? And and so if we start here, now we can start asking some questions, right? Like, okay, for those of us who are a little older and have a little more experience, we know that it's not that easy. Whenever you have more experience, you kind of know, oh, it's not as easy as they're making it sound. Let's take a look at it. So write the blog. Okay, but a couple of questions before we start just writing the blog. How do I know what the message should be? And then, or whether it should even be a blog. Like, what are we creating and why are we creating it? So, first question is, what do we even know what should the message be? We just talked about how you can't always just send a general message to everybody. Like, what if our church send a message to everybody just like you would send to any place else in the country, a local, community? It would just feel impersonal. Or what if it felt like a national thing where it's like, oh, we're writing to a national audience, right? And you'd have to be careful in ways that you don't have to be careful in the local audience, which feels impersonal. Like it would be like getting a note from a friend, but then a friend who you joke with, you even like you make fun of him, and all this stuff, and you're irreverent about things because you're friends, and that's a lot of times what friends do. But then you get a text message from them apologizing formally for, um, for something they said the other day. You're like, what? Like, what's going on right now? Like this is not from you, or this is not from this guy I know, right? Or I've even gotten spam messages from supposedly from someone within my company, but he'd never talked to me like that. So I know it's spam because we have a culture, and it's so difficult just to know what that's like. So they'd have to like hack into our system, read all our emails, and use AI to create something that's similar to how we talk, and maybe that would work. I don't know. But uh okay, so how do I know what the message should be, and then or whether it should even be a blog? Well, there's two tools we use to figure these things out. And so let's go back to the screen. To know what the message should be, you write the brief. To know what the media should be, or like what are we going to make and where is it going to live to talk to them, you write the media plan. And so let's start with the brief first. You write the creative brief with messaging instructions, which is the creative. It is a piece of paper with messaging instructions on it. And it looks kind of like this. It answers the question, what is it, who's it for, and why does it matter? And so this is a creative brief. It just says, what is it, who's it for, why does it matter? In other words, why do they care? Not like, why does it matter to us? That's an easy mistake to make. Why do they care? Why does the people who we're talking to care about this? And if you can't answer that question compellingly, then you probably don't have a good message. But wait, there's more. So when I was in college, here's what they would tell you. Um, like shouldn't we research before we write the creative brief, or do we just assume we know everything? Well, there are two parts to that answer. I'm going to go back to it, but um, I want to know what kind of information is the inputs to strategy. So, um, like basically, what information do we need? Because this is a strategy document, right? It's a plan. It's basically saying, okay, what do we know about this audience, and then how do we organize it in a way that's simple and that says, here's what we're doing with this campaign, right? Like you may know all kinds of things about the audience. What you want to know is, how do I make a one-page brief so that I can hand this off to the copywriter? You're not going to be presenting all the information you know in that document. You're going to be presenting only the information that's relevant to them, which is, what are we selling? Who's it for? And then why does it matter to them? And now the copywriter can write something that matters to them. And so, but here's the question: how do you get the information for that? Um, and so I want to kind of expose a little principle here that I heard in college a lot. And it was, first you start out by finding out everything you can about the topic, right? About the product, about the um, audience, about why they care and all this. So you go out and you find everything you can about these. Okay, well, I always thought like that's really vague. Everything I can. So like if it's a medical topic, I have to find out everything I can about, like, if it's a surgery center, I have to find out everything I can about the human body and about like anything having to do with the surgery, that seems to me impractical and like not very specific. And I don't know, what do you guys think? Is it find out everything you can about the topic, or is there a better way? And I think that the first thing we need to do, the first order of business when we're writing a creative brief, is first take stock of everything you know about everything you think you know about the brief, about what we're supposed to do, about the topic, right? That's the first thing. Line it up, make sure it makes sense together. Make sure all those facts make sense together and they don't contradict each other, because that's the first thing. If you find contradictions, now you can make a decision and you can ask a question. Now you can ask a research question. So, do you see where I'm going here? We're saying don't go out and find out everything you can find out about a topic. Instead, go and take stock of everything you think you know, and then write questions like, what are my weakest assumptions in this? And now I can go out and find information. And so I can tell you how we do that at Resound if you want. Put it in the comments and I'll see what I can do. Okay, and so I'll show you what I'm thinking. So information about information here about getting information. By the way, information is the inputs of strategy. If you don't have information, how do you make a plan? And really, what's the difference between strategy and planning? A lot of people have these ideas, but I think strategy is just really thoughtful, advanced experience planning, is all it is. So, and I don't think there's a clear line between planning and strategy. You just have to start planning and get better and better at it until people start calling it strategy. I mean, that's all I know. So, so the problem, how can we use research if we can't even organize what we do know? How can we use research if we can't even organize what we do know? How can we get complicated and get all the new information in if we can't even figure out? All right, so here's what they do in college these days. They'll bring you into a classroom and they start filling you with information without really knowing whether you understand the topic or not. They don't give you first principles that you can test and play with. And now it's like, okay, I have these first principles. Here's how you think about history. They're like, no, these people are good, these people are evil, these people are, oh, how horrible it was that they did this. And it's all they're doing is just saying, these days we don't think like that, therefore they're wrong, right? So there's no epistemology about how we know right from wrong or anything like that. It's just like judgment, all kinds of talk about BCE and CE instead of BC and AD, and it feels like just biased and not really. It doesn't seem to have an anchor point. So what I'm saying is we take everything we know about people, and then we about these people, and then we write it down and we write a brief, and then we go through the brief and say, here are the assumptions I have. Let me go find out. If you want to do research and you may not have the budget to do that, then go and find out more stuff. First, find out everything you can about the topic, or take stock of what you know and then find questions. Guys, this is top-down research, and this will teach you how to be smart rather than taking orders and getting overwhelmed with information. This gives you it. You will, if you're curious, you'll naturally question your assumptions, and you will want to go out and find answers. So that's that. Okay, so let's go back, and say, okay, how do we know what to write? Shouldn't we research? The first step is we find out everything we know. We may even talk to people around us who've been doing it a little longer within the organization. You're not doing research out there yet. You're just saying, hey, let me test these assumptions by you. And then you read through them and then they say, yeah, because it's like this, or well, it's a little different than that. And then you build that into your brief if it makes sense to you. Then if you have a research budget, then you can go out and talk with people. Okay, and there's other ways to do research too, so we can talk about those things. Okay, so how do we know what to write? Shouldn't we research? We've answered that question. So the brief says, what is it, who's it for, why does it matter to those people? There's actually more there. All right, so if we wanted to abstract this research out, what we would do is we would say, okay, well then how do we test our assumptions? What goes into that? And really it's these should be pointing to this because they feed information into this. But because we're starting from what we make, which is a blog, And then we say, okay, well, what do we make to make the blog messaging right? We make the creative brief. Well, what do we make to make the, creative brief if we really want to be complete and do a great job? Is we write a competitor analysis or a situation analysis, and we write a persona, and we understand who we're talking to. Again, same dynamic. When we do a situation or competitor analysis, we're looking at other companies. We're working from the hypothesis that competing companies will show us where we can be positioned well and where our brand is the strongest. And I can talk more about that too. It's more detailed, but that'll help us understand how to talk about ourselves, right? How to talk about it, because we're looking at how everybody else talks about. We're getting good ideas, stealing good ideas, and then we're also taking bad ideas and we're saying, okay, we don't want to do what they're doing in this area. All right, so and then there's the persona, right? This is the persona, and it's basically, um, again, going back to how we get our information, our epistemology, how we develop our understanding of what's true and what's not. Worst case scenario we organize our assumptions. We organize what we think we know. Best case, we organize our assumptions and then we add research to the assumptions. In other words, we talk to people. There's a lot. There's this is called qualitative research, talking to people. Well, you can talk to people and do it quantitatively, I suppose, but we're talking about is qualitative research. There's all kinds of benefits to that, and I would love to talk about it at some point, but it's not for today, probably. Okay, so this is the creative brief, and this focuses on what? The messaging. Now let's talk about where we find these people. And so should it even be a blog? Should it be something else? Should we buy ads? Should we make and buy ads so that we can send out to people, new people who haven't heard of what we're doing before, or do we want to talk with, you know, so 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 the second thing we do after we figure out the messaging, we have to figure out the media. So the how we talk and how we present ourselves, and then where we present ourselves. And so you write the media plan. So the first thing you write is the mix, what we call the media mix. And that's basically just like, what are our initial assumptions about where we'll find them? And then what do we need to make for those things, right? Like, is it, oh, we'll find them on Facebook. Okay, well then make, let's make some Facebook posts that are like blog length or something like that. Um, and so you start to think about just like like how do we get our message out best, and then what media will we find them while they're thinking about, or while they should be thinking about this, where we want them to be thinking about this. A lot goes into that, like, oh, are they at work? Do they not want to think about this kind of thing? I work in B2B, so if someone's on vacation, I don't really want to bother them. I don't want to like tick them off when they're on vacation, right? And so I don't really want to talk with people about B2B when they're on vacation. They should just relax, it's good for you. Um, don't think about work. Also, I don't know if it's effective. And, part of what we're doing here is like, what's going to be good for people too, right? You don't want them like stressing out. You want them to be healthy. You don't want to, I don't know. I would personally object to trying to connect with someone on a B2B message when they're on vacation, because I would think that would be pretty lame. I wouldn't want someone doing that to me, and I don't want to do that to other people. Don't think it's great. Don't think it's healthy. Probably wouldn't want to be talking with them on a Sunday either. Okay, so the mix. Where will we find them, and what will we make, essentially? And then the schedule, when we'll talk to them, and so when, right? Like what months? Is it during the week, weekends, things like that? And then budget if you're buying ads, mostly if you're buying ads, because this isn't the budget for like your staff for making all this stuff. This is your budget for your media spend. All right, so that's kind of the main topic here. I thought I had a little more somewhere. Where did I have that? To make my screen. Come on, pinch and zoom, right? Me, good. I think I had a little more that I didn't say here. I must not have copied it. Should probably Yeah, I didn't copy it at all. Okay, so but it's on my iPad, so it's okay. So what would so why would you do this? So the remaining question is why would you do this if you didn't have a big team? And so I'm going to make an argument that so there are some things in life that are just easy to accomplish. They're easy to do without making a plan, right? Or you've done it so many times, it's just ingrained in your brain, and you don't need to think about it anymore. But then there are some things that you need to plan because if you don't, you're combining what should be these discrete steps that need to be thought about separately, and then you're squishing them together, and um, you're not making a purposeful decision before moving to the next step. And so we talk about strategy, when we talk about the creative brief, we're saying, okay, we write the creative brief sometimes for clients. Sometimes you want the you want to share that creative brief with the client, and then you want to and make sure they're okay with it. And then and now you're organizing all your basic assumptions on one page, keeping it simple so that your assumptions and maybe illogical assumptions become apparent to you. If you don't do this, then you're squishing everything together and you don't really know where your assumptions are. So let's say you deliver an ad, a campaign, and then the client's like, "Why didn't you do this?" Right? Well, now if you don't have a brief with your assumptions documented on it, it's very difficult to go, just be like, "Well, I thought we were going to do this, and I thought you meant this, and I thought, this other thing." But if you're like, this is what I've done before too. People have been like, oh, it looks like you're trying to do this. And I'm like, yep, that's exactly what I'm trying to do. Here's the brief. Tell me where I'm wrong. Right. And so they know that it was a misunderstanding or miscommunication between them and me on the brief, rather than, and we all know. And so we can fix that and then we can change the copy from there. Right. But it's not all squished together to where we're like, oh, I don't know. We did that because I don't know, trying to make up things, right? Everything's all documented. And so, and if the client's just like, no, I just want this a little different, you're like, fine, I don't care, whatever. But if they're like, no, I wanted this, it's like, okay, well, here's what I heard you say though. And you show them the brief and your notes or whatever. So, and so now it's like, okay, well, maybe I didn't get it right, but here's why. And now they're like, oh, Chris is pretty organized. It seems like okay, cool. Now they're not as like frustrated with you for misunderstanding. They totally understand why, and you're showing them the evidence, right? So, all right, what time is it? Okay, so why do we do this if we don't have a big team? It's just to organize your thinking, organize your working hypothesis so you know what it is, so you don't go off half cocked and start making stuff and then it's totally off strategy. And so that you're not doing everything at once so that you can keep it straight, right? One step, next step, the next step, right? So taking it step by step, don't get overwhelmed. So it's too easy to get lost in the details, and then keep things straight and organized. It's just totally worth it. So this is why you do this, even if you don't have a team. And so I would say, even if you don't have a team and a big budget, you might consider, okay, um, I get it. Thanks for telling me the assignment, because remember, we are, what are we? We're at a church, and we're the sole person responsible for translating that person's vision into a blog, social, and email to get them to a landing page to take action. So um, so probably the best thing to do is when you talk with the person, you say, okay, let's write the brief, and then I'm going to show you the brief, and or even if they won't look at the brief, you have the brief and you can just use it as your working hypothesis. Then you can create stuff, start creating things. And you might even take it step by step and say, okay, here's the brief. Do you want to look at it? No? Okay. Well, here's the article summary. Let's talk about that before I write the whole blog post and compare it to the brief. And then get them to talk to you and tell you where you're wrong, where your assumptions are wrong. And then you can go and start creating things, you know? And so I'm assuming at a small church, you already agreed on the media plan. We want a blog, social, email, and then a landing page to get a call to action. show up for church, whatever your call to action is. And so now it kind of all lines up, right? So now you have the strategy, your plan, and now next time we'll start talking about creative. All right. Well, thanks for joining me. We'll talk to you next time.